So NIO's not building one, not building two, but 3 new factories, brand new factories under construction right now. All right, that means that they're gonna have factory number 4 and factory number 3 for producing cars, and there's actually going to be another factory for swap stations, bringing the total number of swap station factories here in China to 3. And then if you include the one in Europe, there's going to be 4. Here, have a listen.
Speaking of recent developments, we just initiated a project 2 days ago to build a new battery swap station factory in Wuhan. Once construction is complete, we'll have 3 battery swap station factories in Kunshan, Hebei, and Wuhan. We estimate it'll start production in September.
This is, of course, also to help them catch up on their target of 1,000 new swap stations in 2024. They've added 1 new swap station today. They've already completed 156 swap stations out of the 1,000 target. It takes about 6 days per swap station on average. And there's still 844 stations left with only 140 days. As a result, they're also pushing forward for a 3rd swap station factory. Now, why do they even need 3 factories here in China just for making swap stations? Well, of course, there's the reason. Having a whole lot of swap stations really makes it a no-brainer choice to buy a NIO. And if it's as common as gas stations, then of course the convenience factor is just up there and everybody buys a NIO. Whereas, for example, if you have gas cars but there's only 1 gas station in the city, it's not really convenient, right? So that's one of the reasoning. But the second reasoning why they need another swap station factory is because the Firefly sub-brand will actually have its own dedicated swap station because the cars are a bit smaller, and therefore it won't work with existing swap stations. So because of that, they're going to have a more compact swap station, and that also needs its dedicated production line. So of course they need a 3rd factory, swap station factory, to produce those swap stations as well. So you got a new swap station factory that's being built right now, and then 2 car factories that are also being built right now. The factory number 3 is going to be for Envo cars, right? Because Envo, it's not just going to be the L60, they're also going to have the L70, which is a more traditional SUV, sort of like a Li Auto L7 competitor or L6 competitor, and it's going to be a 7-seater. And of course, they can use that factory to also produce other NIO models. We know for NT 3.0 cars, there's actually going to be other variants, new models coming, like MPVs, etc. And of course, let's not forget, you also have the Firefly sub-brand, which also will have their own lines of small Mini Cooper sort of type cars. That also needs production capacity, so you're probably going to see that on factory number 4. And let's not forget, NIO's factories are some of the most advanced factories out there. NIO CEO even said it's more advanced than Porsche's factory in Europe because of the use of robots, the use of AI, super low tolerance levels, and also they use these robots to send the cars to dedicated swap stations for assembly of different parts. So it's highly customizable with NIO's cars. You got so many personalization options. So it's pretty much achieving 100% automation with 756 robots. Needless to say, of course, Factory 3, Factory 4 for producing cars will also have this similar type of tech with very high efficiency as well. Now, building all these factories, of course, on our mind, investors' mind, cash expenditure. All right, you got to spend money to build all these factories. That's going to really eat into NIO's existing cash pile. And since NIO's got their own manufacturing license from the Chinese government, before they used to have to rely on JAC, and they had to pay JAC for every car they produced, which was kind of dumb, but it works for really low volume of cars when they were starting off. But when you go into scale and you're delivering a whole lot of cars, it's just better for you to produce them yourself. And to be honest, back when they worked with JAC, a lot of the factory workers, they're NIO, and then also the parts, the robots, they're all NIO. It's just the the manufacturing license is JAC. So with that said, it's very likely that once all this capital expenditure is finished and they have all these factories pumping out cars at scale, they've ramped up, and they start selling these cars, they're going to have very healthy margins with these vehicles. But all right now we're in that phase where they're just spending a whole lot of money on these three factories. And if you look at the cash situation, we went from 8.1 billion US dollars at the end of 2023 to 6.3 billion US dollars of cash by the end of March 31st, 2024. In 3 months' time, cash reduced by almost 2 billion. All right. And of course, most of that money went into the factories. And of course, these factories aren't yet ready. They still need to build it, finish construction of these factories, and they'll be able to ramp up and build the Firefly cars. And apparently Firefly cars will be delivered in Q1 of 2025. So that also tells us that the factory will most likely be completed before the end of this year. So by September, we'll have the factory number 3 for swap stations up and running and pumping out swap stations. And then by the end of this year, we'll probably have factory number 3 for cars also ready and pumping out Firefly cars. And these factories, they do cost a lot to build. All right. And it is most of the time a one-time cash expenditure, cash investment. It's going to be into assets. It's turning cash into assets, basically. But with NIO's cash burn situation, they're still not profitable. Will that mean that NIO also needs another round of dilution or further funding? And I think we all know the answer to that. The answer is most likely. Okay, it's most likely going to be another convertible debt, or most likely going to be more funding from the Saudi guys, CYVN. But we shouldn't be worried, because this is like going over the hill. You know, climbing up the hill is tough, but then after we reach the top, then it's going to be very, very easy going forward. And right now, it seems like we're climbing up the hill with all these factories being built. And then they're also spending a lot on infrastructure as well. Swap stations, they're building a ton of swap stations. So that, of course, also means capital expense. But once everything is said and done, they've had 4,000 swap stations, and then you have all these factories up. You don't have to build any new factories, and you're just pumping out cars and just selling cars, and your stores are all up and running. That's when you can start seeing profits. All right, so it's gonna take a while. All right, it's gonna take a while, but understand that all this cash spent is investment for NIO to become a behemoth, $1 trillion company. As always, stay safe, stay healthy. Peace out.